I really want to thank Susanna for having me into your family here. I cannot describe what a great pleasure it is. And as Susanna said, I've been away from the podium here for a while. I've been quote unquote distracted. I'll probably have a talk about that at some point. But so yeah, I'm coming back to talk to you today after a long time. And I woke up this morning and said, oh great, and it was my first talk in a long time, and I opened the window and it was pouring. I'm like, I hope this is not a sign. I'm sure it's going to go well, I hope. So I wanted to have a conversation with you today about evolution and the law of progress. Again, it's a conversation. If you have any questions, just stop me, raise your hand. And it's mostly based out of the Spirit's book, a little bit of the Genesis, and a few other sources that hopefully integrates some good information and give us a little bit more insight into evolution in general. So, let's see if this works. Of course it doesn't. Oh, it does. I'm all gadgets today, right? This is fancy and this thing here. So look around us. Think about the history of our little world and our universe. And think for a moment, if anything does not evolve. I mean, everything we see, everything the scientists look at, will point you to evolution. So I don't suppose you can read that, so it's not supposed to be read, but it's just to illustrate that if you look at the history of biological life, it obviously has evolved over millions of years, billions of years actually. If you look at our planet, it has evolved and continues to evolve, right? At some point we were a mass of hot lava, right? And nothing could live here, and then we started to cool off, and at some point, I don't know, many billions of years ago, some life formed, and then humans came maybe 2 million years ago, and we continue to evolve. So the planet continues to evolve. Obviously, we continue to evolve, right? So we were cavemen, and we're still a little bit like cavemen, but a little bit better. And science has evolved tremendously. We're going to talk a little bit about the pace of evolution. So evolution is around us, even though there is a debate out there between creation and evolution, and I'm not going to talk about that too much. Obviously, I believe in evolution as we all do, and we also believe in creation. That's probably the topic of a different talk. But I want to focus on evolution today. So a little bit of Earth history. Again, we're not going to read everything, but just as I said, just look at how much has happened. So the Earth supposedly was formed 4.5 billion years ago, and then life started, maybe about 4 billion years ago, and then humans arrived 2 million years ago, and we don't stop evolving, as I said. But how about the spirit? Where does the spirit fit? Right? So we know that organic life has evolved, but we know little about how the spirit has arrived. So there is a theory of the evolution of an intelligent principle. And I'm going to say it's a theory because there's still a little bit of debate as to whether we as spirits, we were individualized at the very beginning, or whether we were individualized at some point in our history. But what we find in the Spiritist doctrine is that, and if you read the Spirit's book, question 79, the Spirits tell Kardec that spirits are individualizations of the intelligence principle, just as bodies are individualizations of the material principle. It is the time and manner of this formation that we do not know, and that's the theory part of it. But further in question 697, it says, and this is just a contraction, right? This is an abbreviated version of the question. The human soul prepares itself for life in a series of existences that precede the period you call humanity. It's in those beings that the intelligent principle is developed, is gradually individualized and prepared for life. So it tells us that the essence of our spirit, the raw material of our spirit, has inhabited the different kingdoms before becoming an individual spirit. It was prepared in those kingdoms. It acquired certain characteristics before it became individualized to inhabit the human body. Joanna de Angelis, in Existential Conflicts, says, the spiritual principle acquires experience, emotions, and knowledge through its transit in the different kingdoms of nature. As a mineral, the energy of its molecular agglutination exteriorizes, increasing its possibilities as it awakens its sensitivities. As a vegetable, then liberating its instincts as an animal, and finally blossoming its intellectual, reasoning, and consciousness capacities as a human. So she describes, the path of the evolution of the intelligence principle throughout the different kingdoms until it ultimately crystallizes the vision of God as this magnificent creature that we are. Right? A little caveman that appeared there. So, and then we arrive, and then we start to evolve. Again, a long time ago. And we continue to evolve. And if we look at the recent history of humankind, what we will notice is just how much science has evolved. Again, I don't suppose anyone can read this chart here. If you can, it means you have at least 2020 or more. But as you can tell here, if you just pay attention to some of the milestones, it's just amazing how much progress science has made and continues to make. And it's not only that, the pace of discovery is increasing. It's not increasing by addition, it's increasing by multiplication. The wrong button? So if you have read anything from Ray Kurzweil, and he talks about the law of accelerating returns, he basically talks about the fact that capacity or technological capacity is not growing linearly. It's growing exponentially. Now, what does that mean? I have a little example here. So if you look at this here, if you look at the internet, so here you can see a few examples of exponential growth. So we all know that the capacity of computing is growing exponentially. It means it doubles or triples every so often, right? So you can see, the scale here is a power scale, not an addition scale. Number of human genes mapped per year is it's going from 1,000, 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000, and it's multiplying by 10,000 times. But then if you look at the internet capacity, or the speed of the internet, for example, or internet adoption, if you put it in a linear scale, here's what you get. You almost get a straight line up, because the amount of change year over year is so large that it's difficult to plot, right? I mean, every year it's gonna grow so much that it's gonna become a straight line. So you have to put it in an exponential scale, in powers, right? You raise to the second, third, fourth, fifth power, and then it gives you a graph you can read, just to illustrate how fast things are moving. It's difficult to grasp, actually, how fast it is. I mean, it's even difficult to predict where we're going to be in 15 years or 20 years. Things are going to be so different than they are today that it's even hard to imagine because of the pace of change. So that makes us think, is this how it's supposed to be? And that's the thought I want you to have right now. Start thinking, is this how it's supposed to be? Are we going too fast on technological development? Is this what God planned for us? Is this in line with the spiritual laws? So think about it for a second as we go through the next set of slides, because this is really what I want to cover today with you. So again, why, right? Why? So let's start asking ourselves why. What is governing everything that's happening, especially the seemingly uncontrolled evolution of technology? Well, even though it feels like chaos, there is order to that, right? There are laws behind everything that happens in the universe. And obviously we can understand very well the laws of physics, and Gabrielle is smiling there because she's taking AP physics in high school. She's a little crazy. And she knows how interesting and difficult it is, and we all know, and we can describe the material laws through the laws of physics. Those are the things we see, we can test, we can experiment with. But then there are the moral laws, and I know the term moral laws may seem a little strange, but if you go to the Spirit's book, part 3, that's how Kardec and the Spirits describe all the laws that are not physical laws. I mean, even the physical laws actually, you're going to see they fall within the natural law or the moral law. So, but those are laws that we cannot learn in school yet. Right? Those are not the laws of physics or the laws you can describe. Those are the laws we learn in the spiritual center, in the spirit center, right? Or we learn, through religion. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, let's see. I'm going to quiz people. You don't think you're going to be quizzed today. So, does anyone know some of the moral laws that are in the Spirit's book? Any guess? No pressure.
Love one another.
The law of love, charity, and justice. Absolutely. Love one another. Very good. Another law or set of laws? No? That's okay. I didn't know either. Don't feel bad. I am like,
Social law.
Social law. That's one. That's the good one. So, law of preservation, for example, is one of them. Right? And we start studying those laws. It's interesting because you start understanding the nature of ourselves, and the human nature and the spiritual nature, why we do certain things, why we bring certain instincts with us, why we behave the way we behave. It's very well explained by the moral laws. Anyone? No?
Attraction. Law of attraction.
Law of attraction, which is probably, again, within the law of love, charity, and justice. Destruction is another law. We think that things are not supposed to be destructed. They are. It's part of nature that things have to be recycled. So things are built materially, they get destructed, and then they get rebuilt again. Law of equality. It's there. It was written in the Spirit's book 150 years ago, with no uncertain words, that we are all equal. It's very, very forward thinking at that time, believe it or not. Very, very much so. Reproduction. I cannot say I don't know this law. I have 4 kids. Worship. This need to reverence, right, or revere a higher being. It's in ourselves. It's a law. Love labor. I was very sad when I learned about this one. I have to work. That's a law. That's the only way you can progress, right? It's part of the natural laws, the laws of society, right? Which call us to live together, to interact, and to learn from one another. The law of justice, love, and charity that Jesus, as Susanna was saying at the beginning, that he was an example, right? The law of freedom, which could be an offshoot of the law of equality, but it is that every human being, every soul is free, inherently free. And the law of progress, and that's the one I'm focusing a little bit more today, right? It's an important law. It means that it's a law, obviously. It means it doesn't change. It means you cannot escape it. It means even if you choose not to progress, you'll be compelled to. And we're going to talk about how life compels us to progress. So as I said, as such, it doesn't change. It's a law. It applies everywhere to everyone. It's inescapable. And when we talk about fate or fatality, the only true fatality is that we are going to progress, which is a comfort, I think. So here's what the Spirit's book tells us in chapter chapter 6. I like to joke with this. That we always progress, we never regress. Okay, that's important because some beliefs out there, they will accept that we can come back, for example, as an animal, right? And when we study the guidance from the spirits in the Spirit's book, it's clear that we don't. We always progress further, right? And going from a human to an animal, it will be a regression, not a progression, for example. And even though it says that you can stagnate, at times you may feel like you're not progressing. Eventually, you're going to have to continue progressing. So it may be a small pause, for example. The other important thing to realize is that each person evolves differently. We are multidimensional entities, multidimensional beings. We have our own pace, our own ways, our own path. And this is sometimes difficult to understand because I know it never happened to you, but you may have heard, or you may even have said occasionally, how come you don't understand that? How come it doesn't get into your head, right? We try to make other people understand things. We want them to see things the way we do because it's so obvious to us sometimes. And we say, how come you don't understand this? I can't believe it. And it drives you crazy and causes grief. But that's because each one of us is evolving at our own pace. It's true that because we are all on Earth, on average, we are more or less at the same level. But even within Earth, it's like a school. There's different grades even within the same school, and with Earth there are different grades as well. So different people will be at different stages, and there's the law of society that helps balance that. That's the law that says that the most advanced help others progress. That this is our case. She's always helping me progress, right? But that's true, right? We come to live together because we don't evolve the same way. There are multiple dimensions. We're going to talk about that, and I may be more evolved in a very particular way that others aren't, and vice versa. And that interaction will cause us to pull each other forward. I'm having trouble with this thing here. Okay. So, I'm mindful of the time there. So, there's always an important question, right? What are the two main aspects of evolution, right? And we learn that in Spiritism. So, Kardec talks about the wings. So, what are the two main areas of evolution? Moral and intellectual, right? Moral and intellectual. Right on. So we talk about this equilibrium and how do we keep this balance, and what should come first, and are we going the right direction? And I always thought about this, and it seemed to be something that wouldn't really reconcile in my head. Especially after I read question 23 in the Spirit's book. So does anyone know the answer to question 23? And the question is, what is spirit? I didn't know either. Don't look at me. I had to go and look it up. So don't feel bad. Can anyone guess what's spirit?
The intelligent principle of the universe.
Right on. So the spirit is the intelligent principle of the universe. Okay? So read again. I know it's very simple. Read again. The intelligence principle of the universe. Where is moral in this sentence? Right? The spirits never said it's the moral principle of the universe. It said it's the intelligent principle of the universe. And then you look at the equilibrium, you say, wait a second. What is the other side of the equilibrium here? How do we go from intellectual to moral? The free will. That's right. But we are essentially intelligence. We are not moral. According to this definition, we are essentially intelligence. The spirits never said you are the moral principle of the universe, therefore you're going to evolve in a moral way. They said you are the intelligent principle of the universe, therefore you're going to evolve from an intelligence perspective or from an intelligence dimension. And then how do we get to moral? Okay, so that's the rest of my talk here, is how do we get from intelligence to moral, and how does we as human beings, as a society, as beings that at this point at large do not understand the spiritual truth yet. So how do we get there? And it's interesting to realize how the natural laws permeate our existence and lead us to the right conclusion in the end. So, to do that, I went back to, again, the Spirit's book, and I read a little bit more. So, in question 780, again, Kardec had the same. Kardec was so intelligent; he had the same thought that I had. Yeah. So he asked the spirits, does moral progress always follow intellectual progress? Because he understood that intellectual progress comes first. And that's what the spirits told him, that intellectual progress comes first. It happens first. And they said, it is its consequence, but it does not always follow it immediately. Of course, we know that. And how can intellectual progress lead to moral progress? How can that be? Very simple from a spiritual perspective. By making good and evil understandable. By making those choices visible and logical. Then humans can choose. Right? Religions have appealed to fear so far. They said, do this, do that. If you don't, you're going to burn in hell. And it may have served its purpose up to now, because we didn't have the intelligence to understand why to do good or evil. So we as humans have to be controlled from a doctrine of fear. But as we progress intellectually, we no longer accept that doctrine of fear, because it doesn't make sense to us. I mean, it doesn't make sense to burn in hell. How could God, that's all justice and love, and we learn that, how can He have created hell? And how could someone burn in hell forever? So we start to question those things, and we start to understand the nature of good and evil. And it says, the development of free will, I'm sorry, there's a mistake there, will follow the development of intelligence and increase the responsibility of humans for their acts. It's an evolution. As we develop intellectually, we will understand more, we'll learn more, and we'll be able to choose to do good and not do good because we are afraid, right, of doing bad things. Obviously, the question then is, and how can one explain that the most enlightened cultures are often the most perverted, which has been the case historically, as we all know. And again, the spirits very clearly say that complete progress is the goal. But unlike individuals, cultures only reach it step by step. So until they have developed the moral sense, they may use their intelligence to do evil. Morality and intelligence are two forces that only achieve balance over time. So it's just natural that we'll make mistakes, we'll misuse our intelligence as we move along. But as we awaken, we will start questioning, and it will lead us to our moral development. Now, is this happening? Do we think that we are moving from intellectual development to moral development? By a show of hands, who believes that we are moving from intellectual development to moral development? Good. But I know sometimes looking at the facts, looking at the news, it doesn't feel that way. It feels that there's still a long ways to go. Sometimes it feels the opposite. It feels we are regressing in some areas instead of progressing. But let's examine the concept of human thought, how we look at intelligence as humans, how scientists look at intelligence, and see what's happening in that realm, which is going to be very interesting. So if you look at the evolution of the human thought, some of the, again, I'm not going to go too far back in time, but, way back, if you have read anything about that, you find funny that, I guess, I don't know who, maybe someone of you know the name of the scientist, but they thought that the seat of the intelligence was not in the brain. I think it was in the liver. I don't know if you guys know that, but it was interesting to me to know that we never knew that it was that the brain was the center of intelligence. We thought it was somewhere in the guts. I don't know. But then in the 1900s, a couple of scientists there, Binet and Simon, they came up with the concept of IQ, right? Intelligence quotient. And it became pretty famous, pretty popular. It was readily adopted by, for example, the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army, for a long time, used IQ as a criterion for selection, for example. And for example, in the First World War, they tested 2 million soldiers to understand their IQ. It became a widespread concept in selection for companies, for schools, and funny enough, in the 90s, then it was we start to question if that was really a good indicator, because scientists and psychologists start to realize that the most intelligent people were not the most successful necessarily, much less the most balanced or happy, quote unquote. There was little connection between IQ and success, or IQ and happiness, or balance in life. So a few scientists, they start investigating other possibilities. And I think one of the milestones there was, and many of you may have read, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. And his theory was that there's more to intelligence than just intellectual quotient. There is the emotional quotient, and it's as important to be able to understand things. It is important to understand yourself, to be self-aware, to be aware of your surroundings and how you relate to each other. So that has become center stage for him, and saying the success for being happy and for having success in life is not just to be intelligent, but is to have emotional intelligence. So that was a big step forward when we moved from the very selfish view, very centered view that it's my intelligence that matters, and you move to the concept that it's also very important to understand how I relate to each other, how I understand my feelings, right? How I feel. Do I understand how I feel? Do I have self-control and self-management? And relationships, how we relate to each other, how we communicate, that became very important. That was a huge step forward. However, he was very safe. He stayed very safe. He made sure he did not cross into the world of whatever we call spirituality, paranormality, because once you go there, what do they call you? Crazy. They said, oh, he's nuts. He's crazy, he lost it. He's now talking about spirits and everything. So he was a scientist from Harvard and Yale. He wouldn't dare to do that. But I'm sure there was a seed of curiosity there about that. But he never went there. But others were more bold than he was. And as soon as I can get this thing to work. And as I said, the two intelligence then, became connected. But then came Dr. Dana Zohar from MIT and Harvard in the late 2000s, and she talks about spiritual intelligence. She was bold. She had a very rough life. I don't know if anyone know about her life or have heard about Dana Zohar. Again, I know I'm gonna run out of time pretty quickly there. So she had a very troubled life. She became an alcoholic. Her mom committed suicide. She had a rough life. She turned against God. She revolted. Again, it was a life of search. And she finally, after really questioning, because it was so difficult for her to understand life, she finally found God, basically. And she then expanded on the concepts that Daniel Goleman had explained before, and she basically proposed this model, which is not only to be self-aware, which Daniel Goleman had touched. It was not just learning how to communicate and how to relate to each other, but it was this concept of there's more to it. There's more. It's more than just you and me. It's more. There's a connection amongst ourselves. We are all connected somehow. And what I do, what I think affects you, right? And vice versa. So it is really, it's thinking beyond Earth. Is how big of a universe? How interconnected is reality? So this was really a breakthrough, if you think about it, of a scholar to really go that deep and talk about spiritual intelligence. And that formally establishes what we call multiple intelligence or integrated intelligence, is looking at us from multiple views of intelligence. So intelligence is no longer intellectual intelligence, right, or technological or scientific intelligence. Is looking at all of this. So mental intelligence, right, which is the basic one, and emotional intelligence, physical intelligence too, and and again, a lot of this you'll see goes back to the moral laws that are in the Spirit's book. But physical intelligence is important too. I mean, the law of preservation, right? We need to take care of our bodies. I mean, we don't need to be obsessive about it, but it's a law. We cannot just do whatever. We need to take care of it. It's our home. Moral IQ, right, and eventually spiritual IQ. So look how even as scientists we evolved from thinking about intelligence as just being mental intelligence, and then moving to spiritual intelligence. And isn't that interesting how we move from intelligence to moral, which was in the Spirit's book 150 years ago, but the scientists arrive at the very same conclusion, that everything is intelligence, because we are essentially intelligent beings. We are, as the Spirit told us, the intelligent principle of the universe. And moral is nothing more than a variation of intelligence. We become so clear about things that we understand why we need to do good. We understand how everything connects. We understand the laws that govern our existence, and we understand how important it is to learn, right? To do good, to care about others. We learn that everything I do affects everybody else. I learned that what everybody else does affects me. I learned that it is truly an integrated world, or universe. And everything that we learn from Jesus becomes much more clear, right? Because we understand why he was saying what he was saying, right? He understood life deeply. He's such an elevated being. He understood the laws so clearly. And even though he could not explain to us the laws, he could give us examples of how they would work for us if we would just learn. Especially we would just learn how to look at each other, look at another human being, and understand that they are, in need as much as we are, and we are much, much, much better off if we just help each other than if we just focus on our own selfish needs and ignore what's happening outside. So how can Spiritism help us, right? How can this help us evolve? And we know, we come to the center at one point in our lives, we show up at the Spirit Center, and we ask ourselves, okay, how can Spiritism, which was, it was written 150 years ago, right? It was codified by Kardec. Is that still valid? Is that still, current? How can that help me today? And at that point, the spirits tell Kardec, because he asks, can Spiritism help evolution? And the spirits say, Spiritism will become a common belief. It will mark a new era in the history of humankind, for it belongs to nature. It's part of the natural laws. Eventually, as the scientists are starting to understand, everybody is going to understand this very naturally. And the time has come in which it must take its place among the other branches of human knowledge. It's truly becoming just another branch of human knowledge. It's nothing esoteric. It's nothing that make us be looked at as freaks or anything out of nature. It's becoming part of the natural laws and human knowledge. And Spiritism can contribute to progress by destroying materialism, right? Which has caused so much sorrow, so much pain, and difficulties for us, as we start to understand where our true interests lie. Right? As we start to understand again that we need a balance. We need focus on more than the material world. We are not material beings. We are intelligent beings, not material. We are spiritual beings. And then, as I said, we come to the Spirit Center. And how do we arrive at the Spirit Center? What are traditionally the two ways that lead us to the spirit? Pain and suffering. Right? That's one. That's a big one, right? So we come to the center, as we like to say, either through love or through suffering, right? It's natural, and we evolve, either through love or through suffering. It's natural because, as I said, even though we may choose sometimes to stagnate, we may choose to not really put any effort to our development, to our to becoming better. Life will compel us at some point. It will. It's natural because there's a law, the law of progress, right? That will eventually compel you to progress, and it's inescapable. And I don't need to give you too many examples of suffering. We all know and we see them every day, and they cause us to become better individuals. It causes us to become better societies. Again, that could be a totally separate talk, but just think about how much fraternity, right? How much charity work is enabled today out of the natural disasters. I mean, countries make themselves available promptly to help, and the U.S. is a big example where we reach out to so many countries in need, right? Haiti or any other country that goes through a natural disaster. I mean, there's lots and lots of resources and people who will immediately jump into the opportunity to help. But then there's the better way, which would save us the pain, which is through what we say through love. It's just being curious about it, is this desire to improve, to study, to grow, right? Solve. And that's a much easier way to evolve, but sometimes we, for some reason, one or another reason, we choose not to. Again, we will be compelled to get there. So again, I think hopefully it's pretty clear that that there's nothing wrong. And that's one of the points I want to drive. There's nothing wrong with our society evolving in an intellectual way first. So everything we're seeing in terms of this explosion of knowledge and technological advancement, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a natural progression path from an evolution perspective. It will forcibly lead to moral development. It's again sometimes difficult to see the connection, but it will, because as we become more enlightened, we will understand the effects of our actions, and then we will realize that and then we're going to understand that as we cause things to others, to the environment, that comes right back to us. That simple connection that will be become so evident that even you can even argue that it will become a little bit of a selfish view, because I don't want to do harm to others because I don't want to harm myself. So be it. Whether it's selfish or not, it will drive the need for us to become more moralized. And I want to close on time, believe it or not. Just drawing a hopefully very clear connection between what we learn in the Spirit Center, what we learn in Spiritism, and what the scientists today, teach us to be this integrated model of intelligence. So how can we evolve as intelligent principles in multiple dimensions, all these dimensions here? So I mean, sometimes it looks a little daunting, doesn't it? Say, how can I evolve in all of these dimensions at once, or at least within a decent time frame? And where do I get the resources to do that? How do I get the knowledge to do that? I mean, it seems daunting to me, and it became very, very clear, and actually gave me great comfort to really step back and say, well, I think we've learned, or at least it's within our reach, all this knowledge that we need to evolve in those areas. It's actually in the Spirit's book, it's in the Gospel, it's in the Genesis, it's in the Heaven and Hell, and the Medium's book. I always forget one. Because if you look at this and you start thinking about the moral laws that the spirits explain to Kardec, which again, they are all contained in the books of the doctrine, in the 5 books that we have, you will see that they line up nicely to this framework. So you talk about physical, intelligence. We start to understand the need for preservation and destruction. So we understand the physical side of our existence. It's very clearly well explained in those 2 laws. Then, again, the reproduction, the physical part of it, and the need to improve the human race. Then we think about, how do I evolve mentally? How do I increase my intellectual IQ, which is susceptible to being increased? It's through labor, right? That's what the spirits tell us, is the law of labor is through work that we become more intelligent, that we solve problems, that we learn how to take care of ourselves financially and emotionally as well. How do I improve my emotional IQ? Is learning to live in society, is learning to coexist, to relate to each other. Again, it's very well explained and expanded, right, in the law of society. Law of liberty, right, is how, again, and equality. This really trains our emotional and, I would say, our moral IQ as well. And the ultimate teaching of morality, as I said, came from Christ, came from Jesus himself, because he knew we were going to go through technological advances. He already knew. He knew the story. He saw the movie. So he said, there's no issue. You guys are going to go through technological advances, a natural path. What I need to help you with is there, because at some point you're going to be confused. So I need to, tell you what you need to pay attention to, because the rest is going to happen. There's no worries there. You're going to have the Einsteins of the life that I'm going to send you, and you're going to have some help there. What you need to focus on is the moral IQ, because that's where you're going to need to, really be a little bit ahead of the curve there, so that you don't lose yourselves. And again, finally, the law of worship and the law of progress that compels us to always progress. And if I may finish with a quote from Kardec that, again, To be born, to die, to be reborn yet again, and constantly progress. Yeah, that's the law. Okay? So thank you very much. I'll stay here.
Okay, any
Oh, yeah, sure.
comments or questions for Eduardo?
Feel free to ask questions. Yeah.
I actually have
Please.
watched this presentation before, many years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an old presentation.
And it's really, at some point I was like smiling, like, oh my God, this is so cool. I absolutely love it. And obviously I understood more, you know, I guess I'm a little bit more intelligent now.
You are.
And, you know, just the realization that morality and spirituality are different layers of intelligence. That is a gift. And then to think that, you know, the more ethical you are in your life, the more spiritually enlightened you are, that is an intelligence, because that really is going to make your life so much better and so much easier. Because while you still only have the intellectual knowledge, that may not necessarily improve the quality of your life as much as when you become spiritually and morally intelligent, right? So you have the understanding of the consequences of the law and how that truly, truly helps you to navigate through life, through relationships, through the hardships, you know, and make things so much easier. So just
Right
this
on.
realization of these layers of intelligence, and to think of that as intelligence, you know, it just hit me, and I was like, oh, this is beautiful.
Thank you. And you're right on, because what you said is very important. Quality of life. Well, what is quality of life, right? So quality of life is the opposite of pain, right? Well, to whatever degree you draw the line, you know, the less pain we have in life, the more quality of life we have. And why do we have pain? We have pain because we infringe upon the laws. It's very simple. Every time you infringe upon the laws, you have pain. You have some sort of suffering, you have some sort of reaction. And the laws are ample, right? They are not just one law. And if you just focus on intelligence, on IQ, you are missing a whole set of laws that will cause you pain. And as you learn more about that, as you become more ethical in your work, in your daily dealings, as you expand and understand the connections you know, with other people and with the universe, and you become more intelligent, you have less pain, because you understand, you just integrate that into your being. It becomes second nature. And that's really the goal, right? Today, we go out and we drive, and supposedly we are all conscious of the laws, right? I know I shouldn't run over anybody. I know I should not drink and drive. Those are laws that are written. I know I don't have to be reading, you know, the whatever the book is that has the laws every day to say, oh yeah, today again I cannot drink and drive. We know that already. It's already part of us. The goal is to do that with all the other laws. They become second nature. You don't have to think about them. You incorporate them into your being. If you And we have, you know, it's a long path. So even companies today are investing so much in explaining to employees how important it is to be ethical. It's sad that they have to invest so much, but clearly we're still not there. And that is becoming a way of life, it's becoming second nature. And once it becomes second nature, you don't have to think about it. You stop naturally infringing upon the laws, and your life becomes better because you have better quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.